So it's the first week of July, which means it's already been half a year since a lot of brave souls have tried setting New Year's resolutions. And if you're like most people, you may have tossed those resolutions out the window by, end of month one, maybe month two. And the reason why people often break their resolutions isn't because they are a failure, but because that's kind of the nature of resolutions, in that being a goal, there's kind of only two outcomes. Either you've succeeded or you've failed. Now, if people have failed, then it doesn't feel all that great. Usually people become super demotivated, they become demoralized, they become harsh on themselves, or other people kind of make fun of them. And so to avoid failing, sometimes people don't set resolutions at all because they don't want to experience that discomfort with it. But the other part of goals is that there's also an issue when you succeed, when you reach your goals. So as an example, let's say someone sets a resolution to lose 30 pounds in 3 months. Well, if they failed that, then they're kind of at their weight, or they feel like they have fallen short of where they wanted to go. And if they do succeed, well, now they have to figure out what they're going to do next. Now, as is the case with any kind of major change people want to make, in our brains, there's a set equilibrium point. And this is partially the reason why a lot of dieting companies or any kind of program that promises big, drastic change in your life, the reason why they make a lot of money is because they're partially banking on people failing, because even if they succeed, it's not entirely clear what they do next. And once they succeed, then they have to figure out a whole nother goal, which then it's not really sustainable because people eventually lose steam, they lose motivation, and now even though they succeeded, they feel like they failed. It's if you're kind of like me, where if you're getting closer to reaching your goal, sometimes I push goals further back. So the overall end result is that I rarely feel like I've ever hit the mark, or I've ever reached where I really want to be. So that's kind of one of the downsides of resolutions or goals, is that it's kind of a hard outcome, whether you fail, obviously, but even when you succeed. Because it's not always clear what people are supposed to do after then. If a person vows to lose 30 pounds in 3 months and they happen to hit it, well, great, but you kind of have to keep that goal going in order for you to feel like you've hit the mark. So with motivation, that's kind of the other part about resolutions and why they're so hard, is that the word motivation has the word motive, which is the same root in Latin as the word that's in emotion, which means that your motivation is like your emotions. Now, I'm a fan of emotions, so if you've been on this channel for a while, you'll probably hear me talking about why emotions are so great. It doesn't change the fact that emotions kind of come and go. So when you're in kind of the heat of the moment, or you're super energized when the year turned, added an extra number at the end, where you're like, you know what, this is a fresh start, I think this is going to be really great, and out of that sense of hope, you may make a goal, which kind of depends on you sustaining that level of emotion. Now, if you're like any other human being, that emotion won't last more than a week at most. Most people, it's probably like a couple days. We need to constantly keep the fuel going in order for that engine to keep running. So I think goals are great. You hear things like SMART goals and whatnot that I think are very powerful tools in helping people to make changes in their lives. It's just that there are limitations with it. And unless we account for those limitations, we might find ourselves being discouraged and not deciding to make any changes at all. A lot of negative self-talk can kick in, being like, what's the point of trying to make a change? Or what's the point of trying to set this goal because I'm probably not going to hit it? And that may become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So my recommendation, instead of people setting New Year's resolutions, is for you to set a New Year's or half year's intention. And the main difference between the two is that resolutions are like trying to pick a destination. I'm here right now, this is where I want to be, and I better make it there or else. Whereas intentions are like working or moving with a compass. It sets a general direction, but there's no particular marker of whether you've gotten closer or further from where you want it to be. The main thing is that if you moved one step closer, even if it's a small step, 1% improvement is still technically an improvement. A lot of people are in the habit of discounting or downplaying their improvements, but that's a whole nother topic, and we'll come across that another time. Anytime we set an intention, any small improvement means that we are growing, we are succeeding. And so there's kind of no way of failing that. So let's say if you set an intention, whereas the goal would say, I want to lose 30 pounds in 3 months, an intention version of that might be, I want to be a person who takes good care of my body. Now, the main difference between those two examples are the expression or the application may be the same. You may change the way that you eat, or you may exercise more often, or drink a lot of water, or whatever. But with a goal, there's some metrics attached to it, which for most people may indicate whether they're succeeding or failing. And that in itself can be a distraction. People get into kind of a performance anxiety mode. Whereas with intentions, the goal is to take good care of yourself. And so it's more from a place of kindness instead of judgment, and more from a place of encouragement versus criticism. And that makes a whole lot of difference. Our bodies are not meant to constantly be operating under pressure. And whether criticism comes from within ourselves or from the outside, our nervous system switches into gear into being in a state of survival. Not really good for long-term self-improvement. So part of intentions, what it's great for is that in making things more abstract and open-ended, it gives you many more options. So one day, as a way of taking care of yourself, you may opt to, go reach for, drinking more water versus soda, or you may choose to read more hardcover books instead of being on devices before you go to bed. The options are endless, and as long as the intention is to generally take good care of yourself, you've already won. Much better, much easier to sustain. And that's really what we're going for anyway. And instead of trying to cram ourselves into a box and criticizing ourselves for not fitting, can we grow more attuned to ourselves for what we're needing right now and encouraging ourselves to move in a general good direction? So a couple of different ways of setting an intention is to pick one thing that you want to grow into. And again, we're going for abstract. So I want to grow into becoming a more creative person, or I want to grow into patience. I want to grow into being more grounded or anchored in the present. Or another option is for you to find what really matters to you, or what you say really matters to you, and to give 1% more space to that today. So if you really want to value relationships more, to give 1% more space to that today than you did the day before. So just to recap, resolutions are great, but use them sparingly. If you have some very concrete goals, then you're welcome to use them. Just know that it doesn't fit for everything, especially for drastic life changes. Anything that involves you shifting the way that your body operates, you want to go for slow and steady versus really intense. Because even if you make that happen, it's a whole nother thing to try to sustain it. Switching towards intentions, moving and living with a compass instead of going for a destination, gives you more freedom to be able to pick decisions that actually do end up in the long run really drastically improving your life. It's just that it's so subtle that you're kind of tricking your brain into thinking that it's not really making changes when it actually is. And that way you don't bump into your body's resistance towards it. So hope that was helpful, and I want to hear what kinds of intentions you want to set for yourself this latter half of the year. Talk to you next time.